Welcome to Aunty K's, your favorite radical queer Indigenous auntie, bringing you tarot every day. Hello everyone and welcome to Aunty K's Tarot. Today we're talking about how I've organized my decks, especially since I've spent the last few days redoing my spreadsheets, which I'm going to show you, and I promise it's only a small portion of the video to set it up, and then we're gonna talk about how I've organized them, which will be short thoughts on each deck. So essentially it's a collection video, although I didn't think I was going to do one, but doing a spreadsheet video, absolutely. And that in the end is a collection video. So we're looking at my original spreadsheet. We have in orange my first 6 decks, and then my collection, it's divided by years with yellow lines. It is color coded. It has these squares that tell me how much I spent at the end of the year. The color coding tells me a lot, but so I reorganized it into a table format, and it's much more readable. I still have my color coding in there, and this isn't the portion where I keep my expanded thoughts, but I do have that. And the color coding tells me why I got rid of something. Brown is I lent and never got it returned. Red means I hated the deck. Pinks are I gifted, greens are sells, and blues were giveaways, which was a little different than a sell. Yellow marks beginning of a new year. Only one of these decks is in, so only one is numbered. And I also decided to list decks related to this. And I also made a separate category of decks I got rid of. So it's probably unsurprising that organizing a bunch of decks will lead to, taking decks out of the collection that you're just not using. And I don't think any of these are going to be a surprise. I've given my thoughts on the deck of pink and green and purple people who all have white features. So it's still an all-white deck. That, this deck was surprisingly too busy for me. That's not a good example, but some of the cards, it was hard to tell what's the foreground and what's the background. I don't know. It was a lot for me. It didn't work. This deck's absolutely gorgeous. But I don't use it because of the card size. And if anyone knows of the Healing Light Lenormand being in a regular Lenormand size or even playing card size, let me know. This is a gorgeous deck. It's just too big. I never use it. This deck, the art's really cool, but the backs are gorgeous. But there's no diversity. And some of the images are just hard to figure out what you're looking at in a big spread. They just are. This is the birds. So I don't use it. I don't use this deck because I have other decks I like a whole lot better. But when I didn't, it was cute. I got this for my birthday as well as this, and it turns out it's AI. Surrealism is really gonna suffer because it's hard to tell the difference from human surrealism and AI surrealism, because surrealism's weird like that in the first place. And my heart's out to surrealist artists. And this deck, it's too hard to read as for playing card games, and it doesn't work really for divination. So it's not staying either. So let's get into these deck categories. So we are starting with my Indigenous collection. On my list, there are decks that are listed under Indigenous but not counted because they appear somewhere else. For example, they appear in my workhorse decks. And decks like my decks that I have 2 copies of, one is here, one is literally in somewhere else. So that's the thing about this part of the collection. So we are going to get into these decks. So there's the Land Back Tarot and Oracle of Colonization. I've listed if there's a guidebook. My guidebooks are either on my bookshelf or in one of these drawers all together. This deck is my baby. I rarely use it except for personal, some Indigenous clients, and for social political readings. And this isn't the copy that I use. This is the copy I am just keeping in the box because I lost the hard drive that those files were on, and I'm not sure what to do about that. So the Marseille Prendre Vie, this is going to come up in my workhorse decks, and my mini copy is on my altar. The Demora's Fortunes. So I made this as basically a straight up copy of the G-Witch Oracle, but the art is updated and inclusive, and the language is just more current use, but the same thing basically. And I printed it with MPC on linen, and you can see that it's wearing really, really bad. And printing decks from MPC is not cheap. It's expensive. And so I don't use this a lot. And when we get to the G-Witch Oracle, we're going to talk about part of why this deck and that deck are special anyway. So we've got those, and we also have the Brown Witch Lenny. Right now I have 1 copy of it, but a second copy is on the way, and it will go into this box, and the other one is on my work table. And so those are mine. And then we have the Gentle Tarot. This is my 3rd edition of this. I kept upgrading till I got to the linen pocket. And I love this cardstock so much more. This is my first Indigenous made tarot deck, and that makes it pretty special. I love it. I love the guidebook, which I lent out, and that sucks. It's the guidebook from the original printing. It had a beautiful Indigenous perspective. I'll probably get the new one. It is a self-help style deck, really, when you get into these images. So outside of myself, I don't use it a lot, but I do sometimes use it for love readings that need a softer touch to the hard message I can feel they are about to get. The Earthcraft Oracle, it's a mass market deck. I was following the artist, which is Danielle Boudou Fortune, and it's gorgeous, and it's absolutely a stunning deck. The guidebook is really nice as well, and I do use it a little bit for myself, but the lovely messages don't really work with the what my clients are coming for. We don't get to those. So, and that's with a lot of my oracles. There are oracles that I do use, but that's that situation. Mari in the Sky illustrated this deck, so it's in here. She's the creator of the Gentle Tarot. The guidebook and words were written by a non-Indigenous person, Kara Simmons. This is a beautiful and well thought out oracle. Again, it's kind of self-helpy. I have on occasion used it to have for reading wrap-ups if the client stays on for that amount of time and they need something to give that kind of guidance. But like I said, that's not something that happens a lot in my calls. I'm not that reader. I don't get those calls. Wisdom of the Elders. I knew I probably wasn't going to use this deck when I bought it. It's probably the first time I bought a deck and said, I'm buying this for the sake of collection. And I mostly bought it because Asher Frost's Sacred Medicine Oracle is just selling out closed practice, but Sean Leonard and the Indigenous artists that he worked with, who was Tracy Metallic and Aaron Gugu, did a beautiful job of saying, yeah, you can make an oracle deck that's Indigenous, that isn't selling closed practice, that isn't icky. And so that's the entire reason I bought that deck. Desert Illuminations. This deck is a deck I loved. But when Lindsay DeMore Williams started posting, instead of Lindsay D. Williams, it's Lindsay DeMore Williams, I know from the research I've done that all the DeMores in the U.S. are related. All the DeMore lines. And so I reached out. And like other DeMores I've reached out to, that'd be my father's side, they've not responded. And that's just made it hard to use this deck. But it will remain in this collection, and maybe I'll get over it and be able to use it again. So the Club Tarot is a deck I reviewed, published by Polar Embassy, and the person who created it and set up Polar Embassy as an eco-friendly, socially aware publishing house in Germany is Alaskan Native. And so it's in this collection. I think it's well done, but it's not my style of deck. But I'm happy to have it and have this in my collection. You know, when I started collecting decks, I was like, I'm not collecting anything that I'm not going to use, and I realize now that that's not true. But I just have to, it has to be an agreement that there's something about worth collecting, other than, oh, it's one of a kind, or it's this or that. It has to have some connection to it that I'm interested in maintaining. This is the El Camino Oracle. It has a guidebook. I really do like this. I have used it for personal use. With the right client, it is useful. Tends to be more in private Indigenous clients, to be honest, that I use this for. And I always wish I was using it more, right? All right, the Decolonial Tarot, World Indigenous Artists and Creators. It's not at all decolonial. If they had named this deck, you know, the Indigenous Filipino deck, Brown Joy deck, anything like that, I would have been into it. But it's in no way decolonial. It's not. not all Indigenous folks are decolonial. We are all colonized, and what we do to undo that is what decolonial is, both within ourselves and within the world at large. The cutesy, pretty, colorful images, we all know it's right up my alley, and I really did love it and use it at first, but like, that annoyed me more and more. Words matter, folks. They really do matter. So that's that deck and that part of my collection. So I've counted 13 decks in the Indigenous collection, although there's actually 15, but they're sitting somewhere else, so they aren't numbered within that collection. So next up we have my workhorse decks, and that drawer is mostly a drawer of boxes. Currently, these decks are in the drawer actually, and this deck, the Aztec Tarot, is currently in its box at the back of the table, and because I'm working on using other decks right now, but I really like it a lot. So this is a new deck for me that I recently got off Kickstarter, and it's Aztec art by an Aztec artist in as an RWS clone, and I love it, and I love the slight earthy tones to it. You all know that I love my donut deck and my pretty natural symphony deck also very much. So they are not directly on the work table. They are part of my workhorse deck collection. There's also my testing grounds, which is decks and testing grounds, and they can be on the work table or in that drawer temporarily. Okay, so this is my fortune cookie deck and my dice and nail file to keep my nails cleaned up in between videos. They're always a mess, it seems. It sits in the front row decks. So I can put like one here and one here in the front row, and then one on the side of my work mat. So that's the Brown Witch Lenny Mercier Prendre de Vie, and my Rustic Roots. I don't know what to say about these decks. They're my workhorse decks. What do you want to know? I love them and use them a lot. The Rana George and this new Vivid Kingdom, it's in testing grounds. And the other thing that's gone into testing grounds this week is the Tarot of Life. And while I decide where it really belongs and will I use it more, I think that RWS decks probably cycle on and off my table more quickly. They get less use, and some of them I want to use more, but we'll talk more about that. In the back row is the Enchanted Garden, and realistically it's under testing grounds also. But I'm trying to test drive the Life Tarot. I know I like it, I just don't know how much I like the Enchanted Garden yet. This deck came out of purgatory, went through testing grounds, and made it onto my workhorse table. I really do like this deck. It's the Reconciliation edition of the Truth decks. It has pictures. My other Truth decks I got rid of, which I talked about in the last video. Clarity Tarot. I love this. This is listed in my Indigenous collection, but I only have one copy, and it's here on this table. The artist, Kate Matthews, is Indigenous. I really do like this deck. I use it more for work readings than love readings, which may or may not surprise people. Food Fortunes, you've heard me rave about this, right? And I will like often just pull out 3 cards And I'll be like, well, you, client, you want something that's basic and you can count on and it's dependable, ace of mains. But they're the sparkler. They want it fizzy, light. They don't want to put substance into this. It's a more temporary feel, quench the thirst, roll in the hay. And what's going to drive a wedge between this, a great big hole in the middle of this, is your desire for all these rules when they don't want a main style relationship. And also, the black and gold Lenormand. I've got some extra cards sitting over there. Keyword cards from my Brown Witch Lenny. I don't use them, I keep them there. It's a shame that this deck isn't available anymore and that Grandma Baby's Apothecary closed up shop. There's like a prayer card other in this deck that I keep on my altar. What kept me from pulling the trigger was the price. I didn't think I loved it at first, and then I did. I did put numbers, titles, and card name down here because it's hard to count them in here, especially in gold foil. And some of the titles are not so easy to see. So, but I do like this deck. I really love it. It's the workhorse category, folks. I don't know what to say other than I clearly love these decks a lot. So these are my beloved decks. Decks I adore. They feel like forever decks. They aren't workhorses, but they hold a really special place. And I do have the copy of the Landback Tarot and Oracle of Colonization that I use in this drawer, and because it really feels like that. And I talked about that deck, so this is my second copy. All right, the Next World Tarot. This deck I originally had in the pocket, and I gave it away knowing I was going to get myself the full-size copy. I love this deck. This deck is when I realized that there was tarot decks I could actually love out there, because the 6 decks before it, I didn't love. I had no special attachment to them. I was not sad when I lost cards because of the kids and it needed to be replaced. And so this changed tarot decks for me and also opened my eyes to different places I should be looking for tarot decks that I would like and love. And so this was like the change of everything, the Landback Tarot. And I also adore the guidebook. I do use this deck, by the way. I mostly use it to tell me about a location or about a person. And that's how I use it. I'd be like, pull a card to tell me what the person looks like. Pull a card to tell me about their personality. Oh, they're a Scorpio. Pull a card to tell me like how they'll first feel to you. Because how someone first feels to you is not always necessarily who they are. And then, a card for a location. And, on walkways, hiking areas, places where people walk. So this is an outdoor person, which makes sense for how you first envision them. So that's a super quick look at how I use that deck. Fortune Queens. So Next World and Fortune Queens, I occasionally pull it on my table, even though they're super big, just because I really love them. I love the art candy coloredness of this deck. I love that it's drag queens. I wish it came in a regular sized format, because I would probably use it even more if I did. I have volume 1. There are other volumes. And yeah. This is a Mexican artist. It's in my beloved decks. It's one of my favorite decks. Tarot Neo-Colonial. I've talked about this also. I don't think this artist is Indigenous, so it's not in my Indigenous collection. Just because someone's Latino doesn't mean they're Indigenous. It was a colonized area too. This deck is brilliant. The guidebook is brilliant. Sometimes it sits in its box on my table. I don't use it for clients because it just makes me want to lecture people about political, social things. I don't always agree with his point of view, but it does really well describe neocolonialism, even if I have a more radical view of it than him. Another deck in this category is the Untamed Mysteries Tarot by Ivy Fang. This guidebook is written by somebody who clearly has the same issues with Christianity that I do. And I appreciate this. This is an absolutely stunning deck. The eyeballs and the skeletal hands have specific meanings in the cards throughout the deck. They are the deck's specific symbolism. Each suit has the same animal that travels through it, and the majors are where things are different. I mostly use this deck for myself. I want to learn this deck well enough to use it with clients because it is gorgeous, but I really do specifically want to learn Ivy Fang's perspective on their deck. The tarot archetypal is also in here. I love this as a Marseille deck. It is not useful to learn, but I can read it now. It still makes me think. I like the style, and it's really hard to shuffle. It's the length that makes it hard to shuffle for me, and I think the tall tarot cards look really elegant, but it makes them really hard to use, and Tarot Neo-Colonial does the same thing. But I love that deck anyway. Morning Calm Oracle by C.O. Keller. I got this to use for myself, and that's how I use it. The guidebook is lovely. This is my favorite card. I use this deck for spiritual meditation, insights, direction. It's definitely a very personal deck, and I got it for that purpose. I use it for that purpose, and that's how it becomes one of my beloved decks. Sign of the Times by Crystal Banner. I got this because I thought, how brilliant. It works how I got it, but not exactly how I thought. So I do use it for like energy moving forward when there's nothing else to offer a client. And as a sign to look for as showing when they're ready to move forward, because I have a lot of clients who are not ready to move forward. They admit that. They don't want me to tell them that all they have to do is move forward. So we discuss how to know when you're ready to move forward. And it comes on and off my table for that. My beloved decks sit where I can just stand up, pull open the drawer, grab it. This drawer is not too packed. They're easy to grab when I'm like, oh, I need one of those decks. Decks I'm not parting with. Okay, I like these decks and have complaints about each of these decks. And I don't know how else to categorize them. I guess I feel like they're worth keeping and are possibly worth collecting. I also have a lot of guidebooks in here, little ones in here, a couple bigger ones in here. So let's look at this category of decks I'm not parting with. Dream Vision Tarot by Emma Zhang. This deck is thick, matte, and gilded, and it is a bitch to shuffle, but I love the art, and it does read really well, and that's the essence of how this deck ended up in this category. Occasionally I put it out on my table because it's a fascinating read. The images they're trippy, and you get into them and notice things, and it's fantastic. But it's so awful to shuffle. The Sacerdote Tarot. Here's my complaint with this deck. How or why is he the devil? I craved this deck. I wanted this deck so badly. I really do like the art, but some of it's, I don't know, too portraity. In the end, it doesn't read for me like the Emperor just being mostly his hands and body posture, or the devil just being the bust of a guy. Is it because he's a white man? He's all shaded dark. I know there's a guidebook, but they generally don't get my attention. But I don't think that if I need to read the guidebook to know why this person's head and shoulders is the devil, it doesn't work for me. But I craved that deck, and so it's not going anywhere. Energy Archaeology. Gorgeous deck, gorgeous guidebook. So it would make no sense to use this with this guidebook for my clients. But these beautiful images and the words like informing, they work. And occasionally, like, I will use like the word and also the body part and just say like, you may be feeling tense here. But the script on it is awful, and the body part is super tiny, and so while I use it when I pull it out, I end up putting it away because it also makes my eyes tired. Divine Diversity 2. I got this on Kickstarter. It's gay black comic book artist. I knew it was gay comic book fantasy art when I backed it. And that's what I wanted. I love that. I love the art. I was surprised that this deck's diversity count is like 25%, which made me assume that in cards like this, that the creator was gay and white. Because I wouldn't call 25% diversity. And that it's a great deck. Otherwise, it's just kind of low on diversity. I would use this deck more if it was more diverse, although it's also a bitch to shuffle. But honestly, it's the token diversity annoys me, and they tend to be decks I get rid of, but I can't see getting rid of this deck. I wish it was far more diverse, and it hurts my heart that BIPOC folks are making decks with a low diversity count. It just hurts my heart. All right, Tarot of Life is currently on the testing table. I really like this deck. It's art, it's fun, it's fiery, but I don't use it much, and that's why it's testing, and we'll see how that goes. The Irreverent Oracle deck. It's got a guidebook that tells you about the thing on each card and the image, but the cards themselves just have numbers. I might use this more if it had the names, although it has no keywords including the guidebook, so I don't know. I should maybe title and keyword this deck because art-wise it's gorgeous. But art-wise it's gorgeous, and that's why it's there, and I am keeping it. The tea leaf cards. There's actually like 180, 200, some ridiculous number of cards, and I narrowed it down extensively. I really like it. I dislike it being round. I don't know where I put the guidebook. You don't need the guidebook. It's a good deck. I do wish these words down here were a little bigger. And that's the main reason it doesn't get a lot of use. Round and the other parts are small. But the main word in the image is really good. It's great, actually. Mystic Medleys. This is a fun and cheeky deck. And I love the art. And I hate the cardstock. And that's why it gets a low use. But I really do love the art. And that's why it's not going anywhere. And Prairie Majestic Oracle. I think this is beautiful, but I don't use it much personally, to be honest. And I definitely don't use it for clients. That's just the thing about these oracle decks, is they don't really fit my clients and my reading style most of the time. So they don't get a lot of use, and I'm probably not going to buy oracle decks unless it was for a collection purpose anymore in the future. These are collection decks. Decks that are worthy of keeping as part of a collection. So these are two majors only decks. This one is super indie done. I don't want to mess it up. I'm going to. That's how it opens. They're like hand cut. They're gorgeous. They're really, really gorgeous. And I occasionally use majors only decks in past life readings. And this deck is just beautiful, and I wouldn't want to use it too much in case it wore out. This deck is Crystal Banner's 2020 Visions. It's not particularly useful for past life readings because it's so modern, but it's definitely worthy of keeping as a collection item. For those who don't know, its images are all based on the year 2020, and it's a great, fun deck to have for keeps. Then I have the Great Lakes Tarot by David Wilson PDF keyword list. I really wish that the keywords were on the deck. I have used this deck for clients. It's not easy because it's not even easy to use as a pip deck. You have to read in Roman numerals accurately because this is the Six of Cups and there's two half fishes. But it's a brilliant deck. It's based around the Great Lakes where I've grown up, and it feels like home. And those are two reasons that it is a collection deck. the Sufi Tarot. I wish this was regular sized and not Hay House cardstock, but this is a gorgeous deck. I occasionally use it for personal use. Gorgeous backs too. I occasionally use it for personal use, and I really do like its perspective. I got it for the Sufi creator's Sufi perspective. You know, it's beautifully done, and it's a deck that visually I really appreciate. It's large, so that also signals it to just be me. And they work great as oracle cards too. They're just gorgeous. Spectral Whirl. I did test this out with clients. I've done it. You can do it. It's an intense deck, but I really do like to use it. And occasionally I will pull it out and use it for just like 3 cards for like adding something onto a reading if there's a lot of questions. So if it goes on my table, it goes on knowing that it will just be used for a few cards at a time because it's intense. The Four Covens Oracle. I tried putting keywords on this, but it's distracting for me to not know what each suit means. I love the court cards in it. I do find the keywords on the positive side. The guidebook is useless. But it's collecting as like a deck. It's great. It's a collection deck. It's not what I wanted it to be though, but yeah, it's a collection deck. The Magna Tarot. I mean, you just have to have a Low Scarabeo book or deck or two, right? Llewellyn Low Scarabeo, you need one, just to be one. I occasionally use this deck. I do like the art in it. It's fun that they've flipped masculine and feminine in this deck. There's nothing super amazing about this deck, but as far as like these decks go, I like this one, and so I'm keeping it. And because you need one of these decks in your collection. No, you don't, but you know, I'm just being funny. The Self-Love Tarot. I reviewed this deck. I love the people. It is all white. I saw that the creator's next art project was diverse, and so I gave it a pass. It's, as far as like body love, I love it. I like these strange people. I don't use it a lot. The pips. I want to show the pips. The pips are great. They're super expressive and flowy, and I really do like the art, and it reads really great as a pip deck. Okay, we got 2 oracle decks here that I love enough that I would say these are worthy of being a collection piece, and I do pull them out seasonally, and these work great on my table, especially the Zombie Tarot. I mostly don't use that card other than for me. These keywords are great in life so much, and this is like a pick-me-up deck. And so I, you know, not just for like Halloween-y season, but when I do pull them out, I tend to pull them out together as like a counterbalance to each other. But I really like them. I do use them, and to me, they are also collection-worthy decks. These I keep as collection decks, even though I wrote on these ones because I thought maybe I could just still use them, but no. They don't work, I found, for divination. They do get pulled out for playing card games. This deck by the Trickster Company, Playing Cards, is a deck that I have, should probably be in my Indigenous collection, but it's here. The pips are normal. You've got tricksters instead of jokers, and then the jacks, queens, kings, and the aces. And it's gorgeous, and it doesn't get played with as playing cards because I would be tragic if they got too banged up. So it's definitely functions like collection. Same with this, but I do want to read this at some point. This is the Maison de Jeu by Christian Leroux. Both decks are the same, even though the boxes are different. They're just gorgeous. Some cards would be really easy to use, and some cards not. And I think I'll probably use them as playing cards in divination when I feel certain enough. Like, it's like Spectral World. Like, you have to know your shit before you get into the images because it's so busy. That's how I would describe this and Spectral World. Like, Spectral World is RWS, so I'm not distracted. The Ratty Runes by Nina of Shuffle Tarot, available at NPC. I thought I was going to learn to read runes. No. The keywords in the images are gorgeous. The writing is exceptionally small, although I would use it more. I would use it more if it was big. I've used it as an oracle deck. It is, and since I'm not learning runes, that is harder because I need the keywords, so I have to put my glasses on. But occasionally that occurs. This is going in the collection because it's part of my journey, and I think that's where some of these cards are. They're part of a journey. A lot of them are gifts, some are reviews, and purposeful purchase. The day before I went on the hotlines, I said to my friend, I need to go into town and buy a deck, and my friend said yes and took me, and I bought this, and it was so perfect for the hotlines that I made Demora's Fortunes. And this was part of my journey, and so worth collecting, because this deck and then Demora's Fortunes taught me how to read Lenormand and playing cards. Didn't teach me the meanings because they're different, but it taught me the concept of how you read them, and that is a valuable aspect of my tarot journey at this point. Regular rotation. Want to use them more. These decks get less play than they should because the workhorse decks take center stage. And that is these decks. The Keymaster Tarot. I love it. I mean, some of why it doesn't get a super lot of play is the spades and clubs. They're dark. It always shows up better on video than in real life. Which lends them to reading like playing cards that happen to have an extra court and a major arcana. So that's how they end up being read. The Cat Marseille. I do like this deck. It's a good transition deck because it's a prettier take on Marseille art. The lines are nicer. Anthropomorphized cats. That death card is the greatest. The cat images inside the pips RWS, really. And so you can go with either meaning, and they're small and non-intrusive, whether you decide to use them or not, or blend their meanings, which is sometimes fascinating. And this deck I used a lot until my Marseille Prendre Vie came in and stole the show, which is the same thing I have to say about the multi-Marseille and the diverse Marseille. I was using them a fair bit until my own deck stole the show. I like both of these decks. I like the lilac and rusty tone take on this. I like how well redrawn the faces and hair is on this particular deck, and it makes me see the cute side of Marseille art. Marseille art, I guess I'm going to say, is like a Cabbage Patch doll, where it's both cute and ugly at the same time. This color palette is my world. And so this deck, the multi-Marseille and the Cat Marseille, I definitely used this one the most until my own deck stole the show. So I would, and that's where, like, these are decks that I really do like using on my work table, but they get less play than they deserve. So then we also have a bunch of Lenormand decks for almost the same reason. All these are by Lark and Legend. I've used all of these routinely when I put them on my table. The lilac more than the pink sugar, and I love the 90s style vibe of the lilac and the pink sugar. I love the cardstock on the lilac. That's my, it's gorgeous. I don't really know what it is, but it's fabulous, truly. And foil is not always my friend in my house. This time of day is great, but I don't work at this time of day, which is why I'm filming now. And this is like a happy place deck. It's a happy place deck, but I have 4 Lenormands in my workhorse on my table, and that impacts the other Lenormands. Speaking of which, this is the only Lenormand I got for my birthday that I kept. And I think that's how that stays there. Curious Cats Club deck. When I put it on my table, I use it. It reads like a fortune deck. It is slightly on the positive side. I wrote the keywords onto here, and that works great. Sometimes the keywords aren't easy to work with. I'll just be honest about that. But when I decide to use it, it comes through. Teddy Tarot Gold Edition by Destiny. I like this deck. It's very harvesty. The gold, the cute teddies. It's a straightforward read. The difficult cards are still difficult, even though they're cute. And so that's a big win. Push Kitty's Little Wizards. As fan art, it's so good that I don't use it on video in case somebody thinks that I'm supporting a big giant turf. But as fan art, I really like it. It's really well done. I lack fan art decks, but I have this one. One of the problems with fan art is it's based on popular shows and movies, which means they're mostly white. And that's the other downside, but I am keeping it, and I do use it because, you know, this is decks I use, but I could definitely use them more. Fifth Spirit. You know, I love the color palette. The pips are super expressive. I love the people. There's nothing to not like about it. The RWS deck on my table, whichever deck it is, it's probably getting 1 to 2 readings a night versus the others, or 1. And so the art is heavily used because I do use Marseille and Lenormand a whole lot more in the end. Some Oracle decks on here. Okay, Rose Iconic. This is an Oracle deck. So these Oracle decks do go on and off my table, like somewhat right. These decks all go on and off my table. Let's make that clear. I will use these to find a detail, often a red flag, out about both the client and their person of interest. And when I'm reaching for a deck for wrap-ups, which I don't do a lot of, this one works the best, which is the Rockstar Oracle by Orsi, and it's great. Clients love this. Clients love it, and so it is used a lot. And I also use the Bones and Curio cards as fortune cards. Often if I'm pulling a large reading, each column or row will get one of these cards to give like an underlying energy to that row of information. And that's how I use those cards. And folks, that is my collection. It is. And I got 2 books today. I put books into this categorization. I'm not pulling them all out, but I got 5-minute sketch. I've had other 5-minute sketch books, and I love them. And I got 54 doubles on fortune telling with playing cards, and they just arrived today, so I haven't gone through them. See y'all later, folks.